About 4 months ago, I decided that I was going to take the game that I've been making for the last year and turn it into one big asset pack. And that's what I've been doing in my spare time right up until right now. I've been taking all my spare development time and using it to kind of take this messy project, to be honest, and turn it into 7 digestible scenes. And if you're wondering why I'm doing this, is because of you guys. So ever since I've started this YouTube channel and started posting videos about this game, people have been constantly asking me questions on, just looking for help, really. And it kind of became really apparent to me that, there's a lot of people that want to make these games, but they're hard and they need help. So that's why I did this. So introducing Tactics Toolkit. 7 unique scenes showing off particular systems within the project, and one final scene down with them all combined into like a level. And what you're about to watch is basically this pre-recorded video I made like a week ago, just going through each scene and like what each scene does and what that means, to kind of show it off a little bit and see, in case anyone's interested in it or not. But I do feel like I should leave some kind of disclaimer, because this is something that I'm going to be working on probably for the next year. So it's not perfect. I have plans and more things to add to it that I want to make for my own game, but I'll be able to, they'll fit into something like this. Just different systems. So yeah, I'm not gonna sit and pretend this is like a finished thing, because there's more to put in, but I think what I have is pretty good, and it would help give people a good head start on the games that they want to make. And don't get me wrong, I do plan on doing more tutorials and stuff later, so if this isn't your cup of tea, just hang on, and tutorials are coming. I'm actually working on scene 2 right now in tutorial form, so hopefully that'll be out within the next couple of weeks. It's not a massive deal, it's just a RPG systems, but it's coming. But yeah, let's jump in and let me know if you enjoy it. Thanks guys, bye. At a glance, the pathfinding scene is very similar. By clicking on the map, you can spawn in a character and move him around while displaying the path before the movement actually begins. You can move him up onto ledges, and he cannot jump down from ledges, he has to take the long way around. But in terms of the actual implementation, there are some key differences. Firstly, this project is using a scriptable object event system, and there is a link below if you want to know more in-depth details about that. But basically, there are certain actions within the project that once they happen, for example, focusing on a new tile, listeners are listening out for that action to happen. So on this scene, the movement controller is listening for the focused on new tile, and when that event happens, we create a new path and display that path to the user. The movement controller also has a few options that didn't exist in the original tutorial. So when we mouse over it, we can see there is an option to show off the attack range of the character. So when that is clicked, and not only is the path displayed, but also the blue squares are displayed that will show off who this character can attack at that position. There's also some basic settings that really just exist for the sake of these scenes. So the auto move really is just so we can just keep moving this character over and over again instead of needing to end turn, and we basically don't need the turn-based controller to control all of this stuff. The only other thing we can really talk about in this scene is maybe the mouse controller, but I think there's an opportunity to talk about that better in the future, so we're going to save that for a different scene. Scene 2 is all about the character systems. These systems are pretty important for these types of games because everything should kind of inherit from it in some way. In your turn-based controller, it should be taking your speed into account when calculating who goes when. Well, it doesn't have to, but I think it's a fairly useful tool to have at your disposal. So in this scene, it's fairly simple. We have our attributes on the left side, and we have an XP bar at the top. And when we level up, we see our attributes increase and our acquired XP increase. Now these two are two separate things. And by the way, this is my next tutorial is making this, so either it's already out or it's coming very soon, so let me know if you want it or you enjoyed it if it's already out. And so part one is, let's talk about the required experience. So what I've done for this is within the scriptable object called the game config, there is a drop down and you can select one of three things. So you can check constant, and a constant means that how the required XP increases every level is the same, right? So to just literally just set a variable, a number, and it will just keep increasing by that amount every time you level up. It's fairly simple and straightforward. Then while I was doing research on this, I found the formula, well, I guess it's the formula, according to this one article I found, the formula for the Disgaea series, which is a similar game to this type of game that we're making. So I thought it was suitable, so I just copied it in, and that'll give you an idea of the kind of maths that goes into this stuff, because it is pretty complicated when you think about it. And then finally, which my preferred way is using a animation curve. So animation curve is a pretty powerful tool where you can just create a graph or a curve, and you can change numbers based on it, and I do use it in a few places in this project. So if you select animation curve, the curve itself determines how the XP, the required XP moves, and then there's a max level and a max required XP. So that is, the max required XP is the experience required to reach that max level. Next, if I look over at the attributes, these are calculated using a scriptable object class. So in this project I have three classes. I have warrior, mage and archer, and how this is calculated. So first of all, it's random how much each stat increases by, but it's a weighted random, and that weight is determined by animation curves. So I've used a fairly generic examples here, but basically a kind of convex curve means that it's more likely that this stat will be increased by greater than 5, while like a concave curve is more likely to be increased by less than 5. So the warrior favors strength and defense, so it's going to increase that much faster than it would speed or intelligence. Scene 3 is all about the effect tiles, or effects in general. I'm actually very happy with how the effects turned out. I think it's a pretty malleable solution. So an effect is a scriptable object. If you haven't guessed yet, I like scriptable objects. Everything is pretty much a scriptable object in this project. So in this scene, it's just, you've got some normal grass tiles and you've got some normal lava tiles. And when you step on the lava, your character will begin to burn. And when you step off the lava, they will burn for 3 rounds and then they'll stop burning. And if we have a look at its effect scriptable object, there is a couple of parameters here being set. First, there's the stat that the effect affects. Then there's the operator, which is how the effect changes the stat. Then there's the duration, which is how long, how many turns it changes that stat for, and the value of by how much it will change that stat. So in this example, this is what like a burn would look like. So every turn for 3 turns, our character is losing 15% of their HP. But actually, this could be used for buffs or debuffs or heals, or whatever it is you want to change. And it also doesn't only need to be used on tiles. We also use effects on abilities. So yeah, so I'm really happy with how this turned out, how it can be used on, how one object can kind of do everything, and it can be used on both tiles and abilities. So yeah, so pretty flexible and pretty cool in my opinion. Turn-based mechanics are the gift that keeps on giving. This is definitely the biggest work in progress in terms of the entire project. I'm even kind of hesitant to say that this portion of it is done. It works, technically it works, but there's a few bits of it that I don't actually like fully yet. Mostly the turn preview order needs a lot of work, and that is probably going to be the very first update that this asset pack gets. It used to kind of guess who was going to go in the future, and now it's just kind of hard set, so it's still not very accurate on who's going when, or it kind of changes too much, I guess, to tell you who's going when. So how the turn-based mechanics work right now is that there are 2 options. Option 1 is pretty simple. It's just a constant turn order. So think D&D or Divinity Original Sin, where when a battle begins, we get all of the characters' speed stat and we order them in that way, and that order doesn't change. That stays in that order for the rest of the game. And option 2 is something called a conditional turn battle system. So this is taken directly from Final Fantasy. So Final Fantasy, particularly think about Final Fantasy X if you've played that before. So your actions affect your position in the turn order. So if you just moved and ended your turn, you would get your next turn sooner than if you say cast an ability. And the way that works is every movement you do has like a cost to it, a value, a hard coded value, and when you perform that action, that value is added to your character's initiative, and then when you end turn, the order of the turn of all of the characters in the queue is updated based on that. So it does work, but the preview doesn't really support it yet. So the preview is the first thing that has to be updated in this project, and I didn't really want it to delay the release. So Scene 5. We're almost there. We're past the halfway point now. It's all about the basic attacks, really. But it's also the first time I introduced the concept of a spawn zone. So, in these types of games, typically when you start out, you have like an area or a couple of tiles where you can choose where to put your units and position them. So that's what the spawn zones are. So the way spawn zones work is there is a spawn tile prefab, and before the scene starts, we place them where we want to place them, and then the mouse controller, which we need to talk about, has a class inside of it called the character spawner, and it contains a couple of things. So it contains a list of characters, which is the characters that you can spawn that you're going to be able to spawn in that round, and the spawn zones, and it has a option called global spawn. So if global spawn is disabled, global spawn means you can basically spawn anywhere on the map, and we don't look for spawn zones. If it is disabled though, we need a spawn zone to choose where to spawn the characters. And a spawn zone has a list of all of the tiles within it and a team ID. So when the mouse is over, when the character spawner mouses over a spawn tile, we check that team ID with the character's team ID, and we highlight the character that the character can be spawned there. We show the preview and the character can be spawned there, and it's pretty good. The reason I did it with the team ID is because technically with this package we could spawn in both the character and enemy units. So we could position multiple teams in the same level if we wanted to, which, no, I don't know if there's any game that's done that before, but I thought it was a nice bit of flexibility that I wanted to add in. For the basic attack itself, there's not a whole lot special going on here. When you move in the project and you get all of the tiles you can move to, and you display the attack range of the character, that's all happening using the same class called a rangefinder. So when you press the attack button, that rangefinder basically gets all of the tiles within your attack range, and then we just loop through them all. We find characters that we can attack, and then there's some basic controls that we can kind of switch around between them and hit them if we want to hit them. That's really all there is to this. I think this could probably be made more flexible. I have a few ideas, but it really depends on what people want out of this. I've got a few ideas, but it really depends on what people want. Damage itself is calculated using the character class system. So when a character is hit, we think about their endurance, and the damage character deals uses their strength. I think if a character's endurance is really high, it can reduce a character's damage down to like 25% at a maximum. So you always deal damage, but it goes to 25% at a maximum. So, which is just some basic game design stuff. All of this is kind of meant to be changed to suit your game, so I don't spend too much time on it. It's just an example of how it's done, really. Scene 6, abilities. This one is pretty cool, I think. So how abilities work? Well, in this scene, we can spawn in a little mage dude and we click the abilities button and he's got a list of 3 abilities that I can use. And how abilities work is that within the project, there is a bunch of text files and they are called ability shapes. And I have a class called the shape parser. So it will take this text file that just contains a bunch of numbers and it has rules based on those numbers on what to do with the ability. So a 0 means that you ignore that tile. 1 is the origin, so that's like where the tile, that's basically where the mouse is. And 2 is these tiles are going to get hit by the ability. And 3 is it's like an infinite line. So for example, if I look at this fireball ability, which just uses the circle shape, it's just, you know, it's a kind of an average, you know, area of effect ability, nothing too special about it. But the laser ability only has the 3 trees here. If I cast it, it goes all the way to the end of the level, which could be really useful for kind of higher power, late game abilities, or maybe some boss abilities or something like that. Abilities themselves are scriptable objects, so we have a bunch of things here that control what an ability is. It's pretty flexible and pretty malleable as well, similar to the effects, and it uses effects. So you have the ability shape, which we just talked about. You have effects, which we talked about earlier, that get applied to the user, the character that gets hit. And then you have things like the range, so how far away can we hit the ability from. You have the cooldown, how many turns you have to wait before you can cast it again. You have the mana cost. The value is like the base damage or healing factor that it does, because this can be used as healing and damage. The type, which really who can you hit with this ability. Include origin means that is the tile number 1 where the mouse is, does that get included in where the ability hits? Because sometimes the origin could be the character, right? If you're like a melee character and you're hitting the guy in front of you, maybe the origin is you, so you don't really want to include that origin in that ability. And then the required level, the ability controller will check the character's level before it fills up the list with its abilities. So on the character class, there is a list of abilities that class can cast. So when you start up your mission, we'll check your character's level and we'll check its class's abilities and we'll figure out which abilities it has access to. Scene 7, we're almost there. It's enemy AI. This is pretty complicated, and it was one of those things I kind of fought with, like how it can be as complicated as I want it to be. Like I can go much further with how the enemy AI works, but what I'm dealing with right now is I want to give you just kind of a basic example of how it works, because ultimately, like with a lot of this project, how things work should fit your game's design. So really all I should be doing is giving a good example of how this works, and then you take it and you fit your game's design in it, because whatever I do won't necessarily fit with what you need, right? So the way the enemy AI works is a scenario calculating system. I got this idea from, it was a GDC talk about XCOM and how XCOM works. So when it is a enemy character's turn, we basically calculate all of the possible actions that character can take within that turn. So we get all the tiles it can move to, we get all of the characters it can hit, with all of the abilities or attacks it can hit the characters with, and we calculate scenario values on all of those actions, and the best scenario value is the action the character takes. How the characters, what the enemies care about right now is pretty much dealing the maximum amount of damage, with a little bit of flexibility on that. So enemy classes have 3 personality types. There's aggressive, which is kind of for melee characters. So they basically, you try to hit the closest character and get as close to them as possible. So you're trying to get right up into their face. But you know, they are smart enough to know that if there is a character close to death, they'll hit that character. So they'll hit the closest, weakest character, and try to get right into their face. The defensive is more for like archers, where they'll do the same thing, but they'll try to maintain the maximum range that they can. And then strategic is they are going for the weakest character. They're trying to get the weakest character that they can kill at all times, while maintaining distance as well. So even strategic makes them sound smart, but it's not actually the smartest guy in the game. They tend to put themselves into like a bad position, but that's how it works. Yeah, so like if you attack a character, you take your distance from that character, the damage you deal to that character, and you kind of add them together, and you get a value for that action, with the exception of if a character is kind of within death range. Like, so if you kill a character, we just give that a big inflated scenario value. So the enemy should always want to kill your guy. If they can kill, they should always want to kill. And yeah, that's kind of the way it works. The scene itself, there's nothing to do here. You just press play and you press go, and the guys will just move and they'll kill Ted, the little yellow warrior. And that's it. Yeah, that's really all I can say about that. And that's pretty much it. That's all the final scenes, or the example scenes talked about. All that's left is the final scene, which is all of those things combined into a level where you can fight an identical team to your own team and see how you do. It tends to actually be pretty close when you fight them, because yeah, just everyone is the exact same level and have the exact same abilities. Sometimes the enemy AI will put themselves in a bad spot and kind of kill themselves because, you know, the archer's movement is a little bit too high and his speed is a little bit too high, so he tends to go way far ahead of the mage and the warrior, so they just can't catch up. Which is just, you know, that's just the way it is. But yeah, I'm really happy with how it all has turned out. Really, lots of improvements to be made, lots of things to do. This obviously isn't the answer to everyone's problems, but I think it'll give people a good head start at least. And yeah, I'm planning on updating this quite a bit over the next year at least, I think, to get all the systems that I need for my game in, at least, that I have in my head. So yeah, so that's it. That's pretty much it. If you made it through that whole video, you are an absolute trooper, because it's long and I'm throwing a lot of information at people, but I wanted to be as thorough as possible. So if you made it through it all, thank you so much. I'm a bit low energy myself. It's pretty late right now, but I wanted to get this done. But yeah, this was definitely the biggest project I've ever done, and I'm really happy it's over. Well, not over. I'm still going to be adding to it for a long time, but I'm happy to be to have it out there for you guys, and then to be able to move on and work on some new stuff that I've been kind of itching to get onto. So yeah, this was just, it was a cool experience, and it absolutely made my overall project better. Because this kind of forces me to keep it all clean and nice. You know, when before I did this, it was kind of a mess, honestly. Once I started getting into it and looking around, it was just things all over the place that had to be tidied up. So this was definitely a beneficial exercise for me, at least. But yeah, if you guys have any other further questions and or anything, inquiries, I guess, Discord and my email is down below, so give me a shout. And this, I forgot to say it, this is out right now. The link is below. Click on it if you want to check it out and see it. Yeah, what I'm delirious. Yeah, that's it. That's all I want to say. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers. Have a good Christmas.